When I was in film school, I realized early on that my favorite part of making films was editing, when I actually had the materials and I could work alone, and using images that already exist allows you to just start editing right away. There's no barriers. And I enjoy just figuring out how to recontextualize old images into a current story that I want to tell.
This is me in 1992, and I'm living in San Francisco. I'm making a film called The Smell of Burning Ants, which is about boys and growing up male.
Yeah, it's not all thought out ahead of time. It's not following a script. The script is kind of created within the editing process. Even though I might have an idea to begin with, I don't always. Sometimes I just start with images and the idea starts coming to me. Other times I come in with an idea and then look for images that might enhance that and tell that story. I was always drawn to home movies also, my own home movies. Luckily, my dad, my father, used some regular 8mm footage. Not a lot. He only shot about maybe 12 rolls, but I have mined that and used that a lot. And then when I became a father and we had my daughter, I started filming everything, making my own home movies. But also, early on, I started wanting to combine filmmaking and parenting. That's okay, that's all right, that's all right. That's all right. So I made this film called I Used to Be a Filmmaker, and that was very much a decision to make a film about her the first early months, from about which time she was born till she was 14 months old. It's still having collection of images, but much more direct, less metaphor. With the archival found footage images, first of all, I don't even know who shot them. A lot of times I don't know where the images came from. I just found them, literally, in old educational films or from other filmmakers that collect images. So that allowed for a lot of maybe poetry, I'd say, whereas the films with her, they're just a little bit more literal in some respects. I mean, I hope they're still poetic in some ways, but they're just more connected to the ideas directly. I handle the archives with a lot of care and a lot of intention, but there's a lot of accidents that I don't plan. I just see like a line of voiceover works amazing with this image, and that only happens in the editing. Another difference is, in some ways there's more humor in the home movies with my daughter, and they're also, from a process point of view, more enjoyable to make, because I'm constantly working with her and seeing her, as opposed to images that I'm not as connected to. Those topics are more heavy, more painful, so it's a different experience making them. I think there's some overlap but it comes more from my personality, like being obsessive and perfectionist. I kind of approached both of them. It's more dangerous with parenting to be that way, but it's okay with filmmaking and making any kind of art. I think that's a good trait. I think another aspect is persistence, and that's more of a positive thing for filmmaking, my filmmaking at least. Persistence keeps me going. I think also passion, they overlap in that way. I was very passionate about being a parent and about being her dad. And just in helping her grow up, I think the persistence and the passion really helped. Had to keep the perfectionism a little under wraps, so to speak. Parenting is harder than filmmaking. Not anymore, but yeah. There's a lot more at stake. Horror story feels maybe a little overstated, but frightening, destabilizing, upsetting, painful. Yeah, for me it was that way. You know, I think having had a traumatic experience, having my brother die when I was that young, informed the rest of my life. To be honest, you know, I became a counselor before I became a filmmaker. I think that led me into psychology. I think the psychology led me into filmmaking in some ways. Some bullying growing up, you know, being on both ends. Growing up, being bullied, but also being part of this experience where I was complicit. So yeah, horror could relate to that. I think it's that way for a lot of people. I think we're kind of fed this fairy tale about growing up. That's not always the case. Of course, there are some beautiful moments. Growing up male, especially in the late 50s, 60s, I think now too, but maybe a little bit different, hopefully. It was very difficult to find your place, to know what it means to be a man and to be told you're a man when you're really a boy, and to be having to repress your sensitivity. Yeah, there's something horrific about that. I think where the counseling and filmmaking overlap for me was healing, trying to do something that was healing in the world. Counseling, it was more in groups or one-on-one. Filmmaking, it's much wider. It's less, you know, if I'm there, I'm with the audience, but sometimes it's my film that's representing myself and the idea. And my hope is that it will affect people, it will start conversations, become a catalyst for some sort of healing. So they do match up. And the motivation in making films is very similar to why I got into counseling in the first place. And is it like kind of self-healing? Yes, I mean, that's part of what the passion's about, to explore areas that we're trying to work out. But it's never just that. And probably the main challenge I have with not all my films, but most of my films, especially the ones that are very psychological, is to present something that's personal, sometimes very personal, but also at the same time universal. And that's a very fine line, because I've seen a lot of films that are personal but not universal, and I feel disconnected and kind of a little distanced from them. So I'm always trying to bridge that gap and have it so that even though it's personal, the person watching it can relate to it in their own life. And that there's different ways of doing that. Well, for instance, in my film When We Were Bullies, I never show the person that was bullied. The person is blank. It's just a silhouette, a cutout. It wasn't the original intent, but as I was working on it, it became very clear that it was not about that person. It was about everyone else that was doing that, about complicity. And I also felt that if I showed that person, people would distance themselves a little. And if you don't see that person, my theory was that the audience would put their own person in there and relate to it more, because I wasn't telling them who this was. So that's an example where I attempt to make it more universal, attempt to bring the audience into it. A lot of times, the rhythm of my editing is part of that, where I'll leave some space in the film for reflection. So it might be a part where there's no dialogue, there's no voiceover, where there's just music, where a viewer can just think a little bit where they're at this point in the film, and then I bring them back, hopefully. So those are different examples of trying to, ride that fine line of personal and universal. You're also trying to engage an audience. So if that, instead of just universal, you could also say, keep people interested in what you're doing and not lose them. There's a lot of interesting films I see that I go into my head and I find them intellectually interesting, but I'm kind of bored emotionally. And that's important to me not to have that happen, if at all possible. Is that better? You're going to put this in the piece?
As an outro.
Maybe.